Alright, how's it going, everybody? Gonna tie the cardiac arrest fly. It's a fly that Braden Miller and I came up with together. Kind of designed it to imitate any small bait fish, but it's really going to excel at imitating a bluegill. All the materials, your color combinations are endless, but one of our favorite colors of the fly is the bluegill color. But gonna be tying a new color today, and we'll go ahead and get started. So first step is a flyman tail shank in the vise. You can also use if you don't have the tail shanks, you can use a 10mm or whatever shank you have and just cut it short. Just going to use it to help articulate the back end of the fly even more. So first step, we're going to take a dragon tail. These are the micro dragon tails. They come in at about 4 inches long out the package, but we cut them a little bit shorter, and then you want to strip the core just so you have a nice easy tie-in point. And that'll also leave us a little bit of room on the shank to tie in the feather that's going to go in front of this. So just tie that in good and tight. And then we're going to use soft hackles. These are just regular hen saddles off of just a regular hen cape. You don't want one that's too awful big. Usually right around the center of the cape is where I take mine for this fly. You can actually see I got kind of a bare spot. That's where most of them come from, that kind of mid-sized. Go ahead and strip the fibers back. Tie them in soft hackle style with the tip trimmed off. Capture that. Just clean up that tie-in point a little bit. And then stroke your fibers back as you're wrapping it just to get them all going in the right direction. We're just going to cover the rest of this tail shank up with, we can work a little bit into the marabou. It doesn't really matter. There we go. Go ahead and capture those two stems. Nice and clean. And it doesn't matter if it's an ugly tie-in, you can always force everything back when you're done, like so. Just kind of make sure you've got feather on all sides of that dragon tail. Once you've got it all tied in, go ahead and whip finish. And the tail is done. Just tag this with whatever your favorite head cement is. I've switched to using the Solaris Bone Dry. Stuff is just a UV accelerated head cement. Dries tack free and is more or less bulletproof. So hit that with the light and we're good to go. The only last thing, or the last thing you have to do to this tail just to increase your durability a little bit, is you want to put a little bit of the Loctite gel. I like the gel because you can kind of work it into the fibers, and once you get a nice little glob on there, take it in your fingers and just twist the tail and work your fingers off the end of it. That'll actually taper the tail, and it'll glue the back end to keep it from unraveling. That's the The only downfall of these dragon tails is if you don't take care and seal the tip of the tail up, they will fall apart on you. So typically, once you do that though, they hold up a lot better. So tail's done. You can go ahead and remove that from your vise. Then the hook that we use for this fly is a Gamakatsu B10S 1/0. It's a good, versatile, all-purpose bass fly hook. I mean, I use it for a little bit of everything from snakehead flies to largemouth and smallmouth. I've never had any problems with these flies. Benefit of this fly is it's like the perfect shank length and the perfect wire thickness. They're a good sturdy hook, and you can put a lot of heat on fish on them and you won't have any problems. You're going to want to keel the hook. I've already done this one ahead of time. It's just about 5 to 6 wraps of 0.25 lead covered with thread and then hit with, you know, your favorite epoxy or head cement, UV, whatever you want to use. But we'll start the thread back onto the hook and go ahead and cut that off. The way we connect this back shank is we typically are going to use another flyman shank that we cut the eye off of. That way you just get a nice easy connection rather than using articulating wire. You can use articulating wire if you want, but we each just have a massive supply of these shanks laying around, so it just makes it a little easier. You want to go ahead and lay that on the near side of the hook, cover it with thread, and then close that shank up. When you're connecting it, you want that loop of the shank to be right on top of the bend of the hook. That'll condense the connection point, and it'll also actually helps with fouling too. So we'll cover this up nice and thoroughly. A lot of people wonder if this will pull out. You know, people are used to seeing flies tied with the wire and then doubled up. I have never had one of these shanks pull out on any fly. This is the way I connect the tails to game changers to the hooks, and even double hook game changers where you're going to have a fish pulling up against the back of the fly. I've never had one of these shanks come out. I usually don't even tag it with super glue because I don't see it being necessary. If you tie it down tight enough, you'll be good to go. So the next tie-in is going to be Chocolate's filler flash and whatever color to match your fly. This one we're tying in the yellow. You want to tie it in right in front of the connection point. So. And then if you notice that tail's flopping around and it's kind of getting in your way, you can always just hold it out of your way with a clamp or whatever you've got laying around. If you've got a material clip on your vise, those dragon tails will drop right in. But you'll take your Chocolate's filler flash and wrap it about 3 or 4 wraps. Make sure you're forcing all of the fibers back with each wrap. This stuff is real crinkly and it's kind of going in every direction, but you can tame it if you just do single hand over hand wraps like this. It makes it a lot more manageable. And I usually like to wrap it right to the end of where you closed off the shank, or right where the lip of that shank is. So that was about 5 or 6 wraps. Close that off. Pick out any of the loose stuff there and then make sure it gets tied down good and tight. Like so. And that filler flash is going to do 2 things. It's going to kind of hide that tie-in point, but it's also going to smooth the taper out to that tail, and it's going to build a little bit of bulk, so it'll actually help that tail articulate more as it's going to be putting on the brakes on the front of the fly. So right in front of that, you're going to want to tie in schlappen. I typically use 2 schlappen feathers just to add a little bit of bulk. These are your regular old 5 to 7 inch slopping you can get from Hairline. And you're going to want to tie them in about midway down the feather, because this tips are too short. So you kind of want to stroke all that back and get about, maybe not midway, but about a quarter of the way down the feather. Tie them in the same way we tied in that soft tackle. Tie them in tip first. And then run your thread up to about maybe a third of the way back from the eye. The same way we wrap that filler flash, make sure you're stroking all of your fibers back with each wrap. And wrap these, they need to be pretty tight, but not necessarily touching wraps. You just want them to be densely wrapped, one right in front of the other. And this is just going to fill up the hook shank and get us to the head of the fly. And I usually wrap right into the marabou of the schlop and maybe get about one wrap of the marabou. As you can see, these, they fill up the body of the fly really well, and they're sort of creating a veil over the filler flash that we used in the back of the fly. And the filler flash is there to support the schlopping. So now you can see we're getting into the fuzzy stuff, we're getting into that marabou. Get maybe one more wrap on there. Stroking everything back. And we'll capture it. Alright. Like so. Clean that tie-in point up. One nice thing about schlopping is they typically have a little bit thicker stem than other feathers, so they're going to be a little bit more durable. If you see any that are trapped, you can go ahead and pluck them out. Now, the head of the fly is going to be a dubbing kind of jerk style head, and using either laser dub or a bruiser blend. This one we're tying now is going to be a bronze over kind of a yellow pattern. I think we're actually using laser dub for the head, or for the top color, which will be rusty bronze. And we're going to blend the Fly Fish Foods, the bruiser blend, in canary and sunburst. And it's kind of just a natural color transfer from the yellow to that bronze. So to start, I usually run yellow on top and bottom, and then work my way into the darker color for the head as I work my way up. The trick with this stuff, you do not want to use too much. You pull out just a very little bit at a time, and you preen the fibers, just kind of keep a loose grip on them and pull them out from one side, and it aligns all the fibers. Typically you do it 3 or 4 times and they're all aligned, like so. The reason you don't want to use too much is because there's going to be about 3 tie-ins of this material on the fly, on top and bottom. And if you use too much, it can get away from you real quickly. And the head will get, really bulbous and won't exactly look all that pretty. So, you want to tie it in the midpoint, then flip your hook, and do the same thing again. Pull out a small clump. And same process. About 2 or 3 wraps right in the same spot, and you're wrapping it directly over where you wrapped the tie-in on the head. Now, when you go to force the stuff back, you do it one at a time. So you'll wrap the back, or the top, backwards, and as your thread is on top, go ahead and pull the bottom back. Then you can build a little thread dam in front. Work your thread forward a bit, and then we'll go to the next color. So for the top, I'm going to switch to the sunburst. and you use about the same amount in each tie-in all the way forward. That way you get a nice consistent head. A tiny bit more than I got right there. These jerk style heads are really easy to tie. It takes a little bit of practice to get used to how much you need to use to get the proper density, but once you figure it out, most people tend to fall in love with them. They're a real fun style of head on a fly, and they actually create a really cool action. The idea behind this fly is the jerk head paired with the articulated rear section and the dragon tail. The jerk head causes the fly to dart side to side, in addition to having all that articulated movement behind it as well. It creates a really cool action. So now I switch back to the canary. The canary is going to be the entire bottom of the fly. The whole bottom of the fly will just be that bright yellow. I really like this bruiser blend because it's got a little bit of that UV fiber worked in with it, and just gives it a nice kind of a natural glow to it when you're fishing it. If the sun hits it just right, the fly just lights up. So third wrap, flip it up, now fold the top back, and then the bottom. Alright, now for the top we're going to switch to laser dub. It's pretty similar material in terms of density and everything. The fibers are a little bit shorter, but you can still use it the same way. Bruiser blend is newer on the market than the laser dub. I'd used laser dub for years before the bruiser blend came out, so, and that's, as far as I know, that's what everybody used for jerk heads anyway. So same size clump, go ahead, tie it in at the midpoint. From the looks of this one, it actually looks like we'll have room to do 4 tie-ins, which that's fine. The fly doesn't really change any. You just want to save that front third of the fly to use for the dubbing. So some of these I tie, they'll have only 3 tie-ins, some of them will have 4. Switch back to the belly. And same process, and you can see we have just a tiny bit of hook shank left. Going to utilize that and do 1 more tie-in of each. Get another clump of the rusty bronze laser dub. Preen those guys out straight. There we go. Then 1 more of the canary. A tiny bit warm than that one. There we go. Tie that guy in. Okay. That brings us right up to the eye of the hook. Now, you'll see I stroke this fly back a lot. It just kind of builds the memory into that material to force it back. I mean, the way we're tying it in, it's naturally going to be forced back, but another thing you can do, if you have one of these deer hair combs, you can comb it back as you tie. It'll keep all the fibers aligned and it'll kind of mesh them together better. and it'll also get any of those loose the fibers that didn't get trapped by the thread. They'll pull out, and these dubbing heads, they do get a little bit heavy in the cast, so it's always a good idea after you finish with your dubbing to kind of comb it out pretty thoroughly just to get any of that loose material out of there. And you can see you'll fill your comb up pretty quick. And it just, usually there's a pretty good bit that can come out of there, and it's fine. You losing a little bit of mass doesn't hurt anything with these. This dubbing gets so fluffy that it'll still have the same profile in the water. So got that combed out pretty well. I'm gonna go ahead and whip finish this guy off, and all we have left to do is to attach our eyes. So nice tight little whip finish there at the eye. That off. Now, for eyes, it's up to anybody. I mean, you can use whatever eyes you like. I've really started to like these Spawn eyes. These are just by Spawn Fly Fish. These are the herring color. They're just kind of a caramel with a little bit of gold in there. And they actually really match this fly well, just the color combination. So, put your vise on its side. And where we want to glue these eyes, we want to glue them right where the dubbing meets where we whip finished. And it'll put, you put the eye right at the color change from the head to the belly. And not only is it adding eyes to the fly, but that little dot of glue, it'll seep up to the whip finish. That'll add durability, and it'll also glue those tie-ins in at the head, which will add a ton of durability as well. The gel super glue is definitely best for this. It lets you kind of put the dot of glue right where you want it, and it gives you a little more working time. You can make sure it is exactly where you want it, and it'll stay put. It doesn't run on you like the liquid glues like Zap-A-Gap. So we'll drop the other eye right on top. The nice thing about Loctite is once it gets under pressure, it sets up really quick, about 4 or 5 seconds, and it's good to go. Now, only thing left to do, maybe trim up the head just a little bit if you got some straggly fibers. Not that the fish really care, but just to clean it up a little bit. And I like to just tag everything with a little bit of the Solarez Bone Dry, just to kind of seal everything in at the head. Just go right around the tip of the eyes, around the bottom of your thread, then back over the eyes again, and it'll just kind of weld everything in place right at the head. Hit that with your light. And that is it. Like I said at the beginning of the video, it's a really, really versatile fly. You can use it for, your color combinations are endless. It'll imitate just about any bait fish that you've got in your ecosystem, but it will do a very, very good job of imitating a bluegill if you tie it with the correct colors. So, hope you guys enjoyed it, and that's it. Thanks.